want to do that again. Monday, I did what I thought was a pretty well-received top 5 on some under-the-radar players from the Big 12 that are gone to the professional ranks currently as they're undrafted free agents. And I thought I would do that for each of the Power 5 conferences. So here, we're going to do the SEC. Okay. And there's a guy on this list that I'm very curious for your opinion about because he made one really, really big play at LSU, and you know that. But it's kind of even more than just that one moment. But number 5. Kentucky offensive lineman Tayshawn Manning. I'm kind of surprised a little bit he wasn't drafted. I think he's got some injury and maybe some weight things going on, but he protected Will Levis really well for a couple years. He's a big dude who can knock people around. Maybe they haven't quite figured out what his place is or if he can be an NFL lineman, but this is someone, it's going to be tough for Kentucky just to replace who was their most consistent offensive lineman for the last couple of years.
It was Auburn guy before that, before the transfer to Kentucky. Yeah. But I think ended up with the Ravens, if I remember correctly, as an undrafted guy. And, big body, that's for sure. But double SEC dip there with Tayshawn Manning as an Auburn and Kentucky guy. Yep.
Number 4, Arkansas linebacker Bumper Pool. Fantastic name, by the way. Mm-hmm. Bumper Pool. And a very Arkansas linebacker-y name. He's going to make the NFL if he does in the kind of special teams role, but good tackler. And a team, Arkansas, that was kind of up and down on defense, but Bumper Pool was always really consistent there. And someone, I know in that LSU game this past year, he was all over the place making tackles, Garrett. But these are one of those guys, unsung hero, that, is not one. I mean, the fans know him, but when they wonder, okay, who we got to replace, it's not just the big stars that go, but guys like Bumper Pool who were consistent and good and always around the ball, that's going to be tough for Arkansas to replace just right off the bat.
It will. I mean, he had some hip injuries that he dealt with. You wonder how much that affects your stock and those types of things, but he was a fun player to watch. Knew him more from everybody making the joke about his name, quite frankly, since his recruitment about, what an odd name or what a funny name, those things. But he's definitely a guy that you remember because of that very name. But, yeah, he went and had a nice career at Arkansas. He ended up with the Panthers, I believe. Mm-hmm. Is that who he ended up signing with? The Panthers. So, yeah, it's good addition there. But, yeah, I think health probably played into some of that.
Yep, another linebacker here, Brenton Cox Jr. from Florida, one of their best defenders. A tweener, I think that's why he didn't get drafted, because he played a lot on the edge for the Gators. But this was one I'm a little bit surprised did not get drafted in there, because he was one of their better defenders, especially at a time where they just didn't have a good year. But he was a bright spot in Gainesville last year, and someone who a little bit surprised that he was not 5th or so round draft pick. But like we said Monday when you get through this, Craig, Smoak and I were talking about it, when you get to about the 10th pick or so in the 5th round, after that, like, you're talking about fractional points of grade separating those guys and these guys I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And a former Georgia guy as well. Mm-hmm. So a lot of inner SEC transfers on this list so far, 2 of the 3, I suppose. But, yeah, good player, and not sure what the issues were. Don't go deep into the Dane Brugler draft guide on every one of these guys, but I'm sure there's a write-up on there of why he ended up where he ended up, or at least could shed some light on that. But, yeah, good player.
And one of the reasons I thought he'd get drafted is because Dane Brugler kind of had him.
Did he?
Yeah. There you go. In that spot when I read the draft guide. Number 2, Jaray Jenkins from LSU was not their best wide receiver, not their most talented.
No.
But reliable and stepped in at times, especially when Keyshawn Butte kind of went wherever he went mentally.
Yeah, this is one that you hate to see him go. I kind of feel like Kyron Lacey, if he can be consistently as good as he was in that spring game. I know it's hard to take much from the spring game, and Brian Thompson Jr. as well. I think they can kind of fill that void, but this is a guy that you would definitely love to have back. But, yeah, I think he made a name for himself last year, and he was really their most reliable receiver. I know that for the tight end position, Mason Taylor did his thing, but Jaray Jenkins carried the load last year at the receiver position.
Well, and if you remember, his biggest play ever was in the waning seconds catching the touchdown pass from Max Johnson that beat A&M and sent them to their, 1,000,000th 8-4. The balloons drop. Congratulations, you're 8-4 again. And a year where they thought they were going to be improved, they lost to it. That was Ed Orgeron's swan song, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So the coach has been fired, and LSU is retooling everything. A&M should win that game. And here's Jaray Jenkins at the end as they just went right down the field, catching that touchdown pass. So.
Don't know anything on Jenkins. Leave it where you guys left it. But Brenton Cox, I think this sheds a little light. Dismissed from Georgia for arrest on marijuana possession after a freshman year. Also known as a bad apple in the locker room, as a Sports Illustrated story pointed out back in 2019. Sat out 2019 because of transfer. Landed at Florida. Dismissed last October for undisclosed reasons. So there you go. You're kicked off Georgia and Florida's roster, and we know they're not just lining up to do that, but I think that pretty well puts you in the risk category. So there you go for a little light on.
So maybe
on
he
that
won't.
Part of it.
Maybe he won't be missed anymore. So
doesn't sound like it, Paul.
Honestly, I whiffed on that one.
No. It just I think that explains it pretty well. Is why he didn't get the opportunity initially. Yeah.
Number 1. Jaden Hazelwood from Arkansas. Not surprised he was not drafted because he's a big guy and not particularly fast, but especially this year for Arkansas, when you need that 50-50 ball in the end zone, and you've got a really good quarterback in KJ Jefferson, the guy just, tough to stop and can make a lot of plays, but who's going to be the guy he throws it up to when they've got to have that first down or they've got to have that touchdown or that conversion late? That is going to be someone I believe they're going to miss because, guys who are 6'5", 6'6", what he is and is big and a matchup problem, just don't have them, unless you're in Tallahassee. Yeah. They have a lot of them. But
man, y'all better win some games this year. I'm going to be roasting the Knowles, man. I'm going to tell you right now, brother.
No, they better. They absolutely. They cannot lose to Clemson this year. They're spending way too much money. Way too much money to lose to Clemson.
Here's a guy he's mostly an OU guy. Watched him at OU, and he was fine. He was totally fine. Was not somebody that I felt like lived up to the recruiting hype. Ends up at Arkansas, had his best year of his college career, probably. I don't know about all the little intangible things, but numbers-wise, he, found the end zone, picked up some yardage, was not, to be confused with a Bolitnikov candidate or anything, but a good player, good size, as you mentioned, height-wise. Certainly, a super athletic guy with some advantages, as a jump ball, for example. But he signed with Philly. I think that'll be good. A little reunion with him and Jalen Hurts. And I kind of thought when I first saw that, I wonder if Jalen Hurts chimed in and was like, maybe let's grab this guy. I'm not sure about that. But, good player who I think really has a lot of potential that's been unseen so far. I think the excitement with him is what he can potentially do, and not necessarily what he's done. But he makes sense as an undrafted guy just because there's some to like, but there's a lot of he could just be a guy. He could just totally be a guy who's got a couple of advantages, but nothing that makes up for all the other intangibles that others have as well. But yeah, he could go into the pros and end up being a playmaker.
Yeah. Again, he's got something that you just don't make. He's just big. So there we go. So 4 of the 5 are right, but Brenton Cox Jr.
It was explained as to why he